Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our 286 weekly webcast. Now, if this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. And so the way this call works is this is like what you see on Reddit. This is like an AMA, meaning ask me anything. You can ask me business questions, career questions, investing questions, personal growth questions. And my humble goal and purpose of this call is to help you take your career to the next level. So further ado, let's begin. One quick announcement. I've got, as you can see down here, my annual back to school sale. It ends in a couple days. You can get the Haroun Silver MBA Program, as well as other courses at a 25% discount. There's also bundles there as well. And so all you have to do is go to that website you see there, learn.harounventures.com, and enter in the code FALL25 at checkout. More importantly, though, let me get to your questions. First up, we've got Chetan, who wrote, is the United States ready for a rate cut? So would U.S. investors pull their money from China and India and other emerging economies? Usually, no. So let me talk about that in reverse order. First of all, whenever a country lowers the interest rate on its currency, it's a worse investment for international investors. So what happens is foreign investors don't want to hold as many dollars because the interest rate is lower. So when the government floods the market with more of this stuff, and we know that cash is trash, which is why you always got to get rid of cash and invest in stocks, bonds, commodities, real estate, etc. But whenever the government floods the market with more of this stuff, the price goes down materially relative to other currencies. And it's all relative. Yeah. Now, in terms of is the U.S. ready for a rate cut, I certainly think so. So the economy has been weakening. We are not in a recession. I don't think we're going into a recession, because a recession means 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth year over year, GDP being like revenue for the country. And so I think the government did a great job of raising rates when inflation was a big concern. And now they're seeing the fruits of their labor, so to speak, because the economy is slowing and unemployment is ticking up. So now it's time to start cutting rates. I hope they only cut by 25 basis points initially, because if they cut by much more than that, it could signal to the marketplace that things are worse than we think. Now, what happened a week ago was the government implied that they're going to revise upwards the previous unemployment claims for the year ended March. And so that means that maybe the economy is a little bit worse than we expected. But I'm certainly not freaking out. I never do. And if the market were to crash, I'd be buying. A couple of Mondays ago, when the market pulled back materially, given the unwinding of the Japan yen carry trade, which I can talk about in more detail if you want me to, I actually bought more stocks. I put in a lot of limit orders. Remember, Warren Buffett said the New York Stock Exchange is the only store in the world where consumers sell stuff when it goes on sale. Think about that. Always be a long-term investor. Yeah, and if you have follow-ups, please let me know, and thank you. Next up, hey, Marin, how are you? Marin goes by the name Skin Bell. She's one of my amazing students, and I'm going to meet her for the first time in person in Kenya at the beginning of October as we're building our second school in Africa. It's going to be a 6-hour drive from the Nairobi airport in honor of her mother. It's going to be called the Leah Murrow's School for Girls. Yeah, can't wait to meet you. You wrote, hope you are well, likewise. Can you kindly explain why the VIX spiked about 2 weeks ago? And is that an indication of a recession? No, not at all. So what the VIX indicates is fear in the markets. And when the VIX spikes, and I'll show you a chart in a second, but when the VIX spikes materially and ends the day above a reading of 70 or 80, then I don't care how bad things are. I'll put my reputation online by saying you have to buy stocks. Now, it didn't end the day at that level, but it did spike intraday to 65. Let me show you what this means in more detail. So let's go together to finance.yahoo.com. And then what we'll do, and I'll talk about Nvidia's quarter if you want me to, and why it's down this morning a little bit. But let me talk about the VIX first. All right, so the VIX was created back in 1990 by the CBOE, that's the Chicago Board of Exchange. And what it does, and this is crucial for everybody to understand, but what it does is it measures the expected volatility of the markets, meaning the S&P 500, in the next 30 days or so. And the way it does it is by looking at options. Now, If volatility is high, that means fear. And high volatility means people freak out and they sell stocks. So what we can see here is it was launched initially at a reading of about 15. I think might be covering that in the corner. Sorry about that. And then eventually it spiked in the fall of 2008 to above 70 intraday. You can't see it here. And that was the best time to buy stocks, around that level. Then we saw it spike here to above 80. It doesn't show here, but above 80 intraday back in the first quarter of 2020 when everybody was selling every asset class. And that was the best time to buy as well. And so I do put my reputation on the line by saying, if and when the VIX spikes and closes above 70 or 80, again, you have to buy then. And I'll certainly be buying. Do your own homework, please. But you got to buy when everyone else is freaking out, because as Wayne Gretzky said, you want to skate to where the puck is going to be. Meaning you want to buy stocks that investors are going to love. And if you buy the same stocks everybody owns, there's not that many incremental investors to push it higher. Now, you can't see it here, but intraday, back a couple Mondays ago when the market was in free fall temporarily, the VIX actually spiked to above 65. But what I'm looking for is a closing price above 70 or above 80. It does not measure that we're in a recession in most cases. Yeah. All right. Next question is, can you explain how we can use artificial intelligence to get more customers and also generate more income in a practical manner? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very bullish on the markets over the next couple of decades because of AI. Now, I think the S&P 500 is going to be up between 15 and 20% every year on average for at least the next decade. There will be down years as well. The reason I say this is tons of companies are using AI to cut expenses materially. And when they cut expenses, especially sales and marketing expenses and customer service expenses, it goes right to the bottom line, which means massive earnings beats for companies. And companies are valued based on a PE in most cases. So that means higher stock prices. So I'm really bullish from an expense management perspective in terms of how do I run my business? Well, I don't have any employees. I have contractors. I run what's called an S corporation. And I use AI and process automation a lot in order to cut expenses. And so my customer service is based on Chatbase, which is based on ChatGPT. If you go to learn.harounventures.com, you can see my customer service AI bot in action. Now, customer service is the number one area that people are focusing on right now for AI to cut expenses. But it's only a matter of time until we start using AI to grow revenue. And I'm trying to disrupt my own business model before the marketplace does. What does that mean? Well, you got to be preemptive and think longer term. Like Reed Hastings, the brilliant CEO and founder of Netflix, he disrupted his own business model years ago by releasing a streaming product. And at that point in time, the DVD rental business through the mail for him was going exceptionally well. But he's long-term focused. And so what I've done is I've signed a contract, which is confidential right now. I can't release details, with a very large Bay Area tech company to actually create an AI version of me. And what I'm going to be doing is, and you're going to see this eventually, is not just for customer support, having conversations with me, but I'll be teaching as well using this avatar. And I've tested it out and it's unbelievable. I've had conversations with me, sounds crazy, and I couldn't tell the difference. And the AI version of me has awful jokes as well, brutal dad humor as well. And you know, if you meet me in real life, I'm a tiny, tiny man. But I think it's just a matter of time until we all start learning from different avatars. Now, I think it's crucial that we all establish our own social media brand immediately. You know, put the line in the sand and get this done immediately, because what's going to happen is if you don't start making YouTube videos or TikToks or Instas of yourself within 5 years or so, it's going to be so much harder to establish the brand of you, because everybody is going to be watching and learning from AI characters. The same thing with Hollywood. You know, part of the Hollywood strike a couple of years ago was predicated on the use of AI longer term, replacing writers and maybe actors. It doesn't make sense, you know, to pay an actor like Leonardo DiCaprio $20 to $50 million a movie when you can use AI to do this. And what happened, and this is taking Hollywood by storm and many industries too, And what happened actually was Tyler Perry, who makes great movies, the second he saw OpenAI's Sora product, which is a video service, it's unbelievable. The second he saw it, he canceled his $1 billion CapEx expansion on a studio he was going to be building in Atlanta. So the bottom line is we've got like 5 years or so to establish the brand of you, make content, please, and repurpose it online before AI takes these jobs. Yeah. And if you have follow-up questions about that, by all means, please let me know, and thank you. Yeah. All right. Next up, hey, Carolyn. Carolyn wrote, good morning, Chris. Good morning. Je veux faire le casse matinée. Carolyn's from France originally. Carolyn wrote, why is Nvidia stock down on good earnings news? Yeah. So Nvidia posted superb earnings, but the stock is up more than 150% this year. And so what happened was during the earnings call, the CFO, I think her name is Colette Kress, mentioned that gross margins have been under pressure. And so gross margins, which is revenue minus the cost of goods sold, gross margins came in at 75.1%, down from just over 78% the quarter before. And the company signaled that their next generation Blackwell chips might be shipped 3 months later than expected, and there could be inventory issues as well. And this is scaring some investors. I wouldn't freak out. I own the stock. I'm not selling. But this freaks out some investors because inventory can destroy a company. And I was explaining to my kids what happened with the video game sector in the early 80s. Now, the entire video game sector went bankrupt in the early 1980s because of inventory. Let me explain. So in the early 80s, this great movie came out when I was about 10 years old called E.T. And the Atari Corporation made the E.T. video game. And they thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a bestseller. Steven Spielberg blessed it as well. And so Atari made gazillions of these things. And it was the worst game ever. I got it for Christmas. I love you, Dad, if you're watching, but the game was awful. I got it for Christmas. And basically, you're this E.T. guy walking backwards and forwards trying to eat M&Ms. It was awful. And so what happened was Atari had to literally bury hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of these things in the desert. And it destroyed the company. And it wasn't until Nintendo came along a year or two later with their 8-bit Super Nintendo system before the industry rebounded. But the bottom line is inventory can destroy a company. Now, I wouldn't freak out about this with respect to Nvidia. But, I mean, the stock is pricing in a cure for cancer. It's priced for perfection. It's up over 150% this year. But there was a little bit of hair on the corner, so to speak, when it comes to gross margin. And if you have follow-up questions, please let me know, and thank you. All right. But it's not down that much, though, eh? Just a little pullback. Expectations were high. Yeah. Now, sometimes you'll see a stock go up or down 20% on earnings, right? Once they release earnings. Why does that happen? Well, it usually happens because the company's financial statements that they released leads Wall Street to believe that their earnings estimates will be 20% lower or 20% higher in the future. And since Wall Street analysts value companies for the most part based on price earnings in the long run, if a company misses earnings by 20% and the analysts enter all that financial data into their financial models, and that causes their earnings estimate to go down 20%, and they're still assigning the same PE price targets on the company, then what happens is the stock drops by that amount, or vice versa, goes up. As long as you're not assuming that there's going to be multiple compression or expansion. And I can go through that in a heck of a lot more detail if you want me to. All right, Shahar, how are you? Good to see you, bud. Ani chotze coffee achshav. Le Saint Pierre wrote, hey, Chris, hey. Last week, I mentioned about me going to work for RBC in Canada. I remember, yeah, as a new career path after a 15-year career as an accountant/entrepreneur. You mentioned the term origination role. Can you explain more on that? Yeah, absolutely. So, and I was talking to my son, Andrew, about this as well. He's going into third year at Berkeley studying business. But if you're not sure what to do career-wise, what I recommend doing is getting what's called an origination job. And what that means is this. You make the product, and if you hate making the product, that's okay. You can move on and sell the product or manage people that make the product. Let me give you 3 very quick examples. One origination example is investment banking, where investment bankers create the IPO product or they create the M&A strategy. Another example of that is if you're a developer, say you're a programmer at Google, for example, you create the product, you code it. Another example of an origination job is consulting, like working at McKinsey, where you create the corporate strategy. Now, in all three of these cases, those are origination jobs, meaning you create the product. And if you hate creating the product, you're very marketable because you understand how to make the product and you can always move on to sell the product, manage people in the operations department of that product, etc. So the bottom line message there is if you're not sure what to do career-wise, start with an origination job. And this is why a lot of people out of undergrad will spend between 2 and 4 years working as either a developer, an investment banker, or a consultant before going to business school. All right. And then you wrote one more thing about the bank, RBC, sure. What is your stand on bank systems? And how do you see the future of the system in the actual and future financial market? Yeah. So you're based in Canada. There's only 5 or 6 banks there. It's a heavily regulated market, which is why Canada didn't really have that big of a financial crisis in 2008 compared to other countries. So I would say the impact of technology on banks is going to be less noticeable for you in Canada. In terms of the United States and globally, I really do believe that cash is trash and that eventually, and this is such an antiquated system, like these dollar bills here look exactly the same as they looked in 1935. And when there's no innovation in a given sector, right, you get screwed with pricing because monopolies don't innovate. But now that we have cryptocurrencies, I do believe that in the long run, there's going to be competition for fiat-based currencies like this, which will definitely impact all banks materially. And AI is definitely going to impact banks as well. But I wouldn't be too worried about AI's immediate impact on financial services because 75% of all jobs in the financial services sector are sales-oriented, where you grip and grin. And AI won't be able to replace that in the near future, at least not in the next 5 to 10 years. All right. And then Dario wrote, I have your options course and I have an issue with the Excel. Can you send me a new spreadsheet? Thanks. I did it under Udemy. Yeah. And I saw you sent me a personal email. Just always ask me here. Thanks. Yeah. All you have to do is this. Go to the first lecture of the course and download the spreadsheet again. Yeah. And try to run it from your C drive instead of running it from the cloud. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, please ask in the course and my team will answer immediately. Thank you for your support. Good morning to you as well. All right, Lay, how are you? Good to see you. We've got Boxing Guy who wrote, good morning, Chris, from the great state of Utah. I love Utah. I used to go there every year for the Nobel Brain Share Conference. I go skiing at Snowbird as well. Or meeting with Jack Messman, the CEO there. You wrote, in the next little while, I have a skip level meeting with a VP. A skip level meeting with a VP. I've never heard of that. Okay. What general questions are good to ask to make the most of the meeting? And then you're the man. Thank you for that. Yeah. So what I would do, and I'm going to make this a generic answer so it applies to everybody. If you're worried about not getting promoted fast enough, or if you're worried about losing your job, I always recommend meeting with your boss or senior executives every 3 months. In the first 10 minutes of those meetings, you want to bond, right? You bond before business. You talk about, what you have in common, your love for sports or whatever it is, or BYU, which usually has a good football team. Then what you do is you transition to something like this, if true. I love our team. I love what we've accomplished. And I'm really optimistic about the future and what we can accomplish together. But I wanted to ask you, please, to let me know, how can I humbly add more value so that I can maybe eventually be considered for a promotion or a raise? Because as you know, it's very expensive to raise a family here in Salt Lake City, for example. And I want to be able to humbly provide the best standard of living for my family. And then your boss will tell you exactly what you need to achieve to add more value, meaning to get promoted or to get a raise. Then what you do is 3 to 6 months later, when your boss is in a great mood and he or she says, great job on something, you immediately say, thank you. Do you have time for a coffee? And in the coffee meeting, you bond for the first 10 minutes. And then you say, our team has accomplished a lot together, yada, yada, all that good stuff. And if you recall, when we sat down 3 months ago, you gave me a list of criteria in order to be considered for a raise or a promotion. And as you know, it's very expensive to raise a family in the area here. And so I've humbly accomplished all the criteria that we spoke about. And I'd love to please ask you to be considered for a raise or a promotion. Thank you. Very important. Because closed mouths don't get fed. It's true. And all these people that we work with that are getting promoted faster than us and raises faster than us that aren't doing as good of a job as us, do you know why they got there? Because behind closed doors, they did exactly what I told you. They asked. Asking, you'll receive. It's prophetic, and it's been true since the beginning of time. And if you do this, every 3 to 6 months, and you perform well, of course, then not only will you not lose your job, you'll be less likely to lose your job, but you'll also get promoted and get raises faster than your peers. It's just the way it works. You have to ask. Okay. All right. Next up, Angel wrote, good morning, Chris. Good morning to you too. Gio wrote, good morning, Chris. How are you? What are your thoughts about how Korea and China have been slowly starting to punish short sellers and hedge funds, etc.? Is this a good direction or more backwards looking? Yeah. I'm surprised to hear that about Korea. China, I kind of heard about as well. I think short selling is actually good for the markets, and it's good for capitalism. And so the more right-wing a country is, the more likely they are to allow short selling, because it makes sure that all assets are correctly valued. And if you take away, that fundamental financial freedom of being able to bet against companies, then what's going to happen is international investors are not going to have the same amount of confidence in your markets. So I'm definitely against that. Yeah. Now, there are measures in place to make sure that stocks don't go down too quickly because of short sellers. And that's something called the plus tick rule, which means this. You can't short a stock in many markets if it continues to go down. You can only short it if it goes up a little bit, if the last trade was up a bit. And that's to stop a stock from falling like you're catching a falling knife. And that's why when I worked on the trading floor at Goldman Sachs, every now and then I'd hear somebody say, I have a plus tick seller of whatever stock. And that means a short seller. Okay. But I don't recommend that my students short stocks. What I want you to do instead, please, is consider buying puts. Because if you buy a put, you pay this much money. And if it goes down, you make a lot. If it goes up, all you lose is this. When you short a stock, like GameStop, for example, you can lose an infinite amount if the stock goes up. And in January of 2021, GameStop stock went up 29.4 times because there were too many people short the stock. And there was slightly positive news that came out. I think it was Ryan Cohen joined the board. He's an activist, retail investor. And what happened was the short sellers freaked out. So how do you know if a short is crowded? Well, if too many people are short the stock, then what's called a short interest ratio is high. And a short interest ratio above 10 means it takes more than 10 days for all the short sellers to cover the stock that they're short. So I don't like shorting anything with a short interest ratio above 10. Now, how do you know that a stock is not going to go up on good news? Well, if a company releases multiple positive data points and the stock does not go up, then all the good news is priced in. By the same token, if you're short a company, and this has happened to me before when I worked in the hedge fund industry, when you're short a company and it doesn't go down on multiple negative news data points, then all the bad news is priced in. And of course, you have to do a lot more fundamental research along those areas as well. And as always, if you have follow-up questions about this or anything, I'm here to humbly help. Thank you. Okay. Hey, Quint, how are you? All right. And then next up, I've got here, Le Saint Pierre wrote, Canada's dollar used to be in line with the value of petrol. But since 2021, it's not anymore. Do you know why it's like this? And what do you think this means to the value of the country? Yeah, usually what happens to countries that are natural resource rich, like Brazil, Australia, and Canada, is when the price of oil and commodities go up materially, so does their currency, meaning the Canadian dollar, Brazilian real, and Australian dollar. And the reason is because if China, which has a voracious appetite for natural resources, if China wants to buy oil from Canada, for example, from Petro-Canada, it has to first convert the Chinese renminbi, the Chinese yuan, its currency, into Canadian dollars, which drives out the Canadian dollar. Then it buys oil directly from Petro-Canada. Now, the correlation is not as high as it used to be, and one of the reasons might be because China is buying a heck of a lot more oil and natty gas directly from Russia for obvious reasons. All right. Next up, Raphael wrote, "Hey Chris, how are you? I'm always great, thanks. Good to see you. I remember you. Yeah, that's right. You're from the Philippines. You lived in Washington State, and you worked in financial services. And you graduated from my gold MBA several years ago. Great to see you." You wrote, "How do you deal with relatives or family in disagreement when it comes to business decisions?" Yeah. Ooh, that's tough. Okay, so first of all, don't do business with family or friends. People change when it comes to money, okay? Just don't. And if you have to have a friend invest in your company, for example, please make sure that they understand that there's a good chance that they could lose every penny, and you don't want it to impact your relationship with that friend. So I've made friends lots of money, but I have one in particular that lost money in one of my deals. And he knew all the risks going in, and we haven't spoken in years, and it breaks my heart. So please make sure not to do business with friends ever. Now, if a friend of yours, and this is controversial, but I'm transparent as always. But if a friend of yours asks you to invest in their company, what I want you to do is I want you to quietly ask yourself this: why am I so lucky to be given this opportunity? And the reason is likely because nobody else will invest. Yeah. So I would, separation of church and state, family and business, always, if you possibly can. Yeah. It's hard though, because I know a lot of people they built these empires and they want their kids to take it over, with Nepo babies, etc. But, what usually happens is the first generation makes money, the second spends it, and the third has none. Yeah. Okay. And then Boxing Guy wrote, "Chris, I apologize to ask this." No, please, I answer every question. I read every question too. Can you talk about the video personal branding and how AI is influencing it once more? That was important information you just shared. Yeah, absolutely. So within artificial intelligence, there's different levels. One of them is called AGI, which means artificial general intelligence, which means that computers are smarter and better than us. It's like the Turing test times 10. And I think we're going to reach AGI within 5 to 10 years. What does that mean for us? Well, it means that instead of you watching this weekly webcast with me answering questions, you'll be watching an avatar that's much better looking than me. Although people do think I look like Bradley Pitts. Just kidding. But you'll be watching an avatar and not a person. But that's not coming, in my humble opinion, for 5 or maybe 10 years from now. So that means you have a 5 to 10 year window of opportunity to create as much content as you can, as fast as you can, and get your brand name out there. It's crucial that you do this now, please. And don't try to be perfect with your social media content. Heck, I make tons of mistakes. I've been doing this for 286 weeks in a row. Don't be perfect, because as Salvador Dali said, if you strive for perfection, you'll never reach it. And so the way I want you to think about creating content is I want you to use a page from Nintendo's book and repurpose content. What does that mean? Well, Nintendo is the oldest tech company in history. And they weren't always a tech company, but they're very successful because they repurpose content. So what that means is this. The 8-bit games Nintendo made back in the 80s, they repurposed that, and the 16-bit and 64-bit games and Wii U games, etc., on newer consoles. And I want you to repurpose your content as well. And Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about this. He's way better than I am at social media. And what that means is this. As you watch this weekly call, you'll notice that on my other social media platforms, I repurpose the content. So all the questions that you ask are repurposed. This is also a podcast, by the way. It's also my TikTok videos. Follow me on TikTok, Insta, etc. Everything is repurposed so that by the time this webcast is done, within a couple days of it, there's nothing left on this webcast carcass, so to speak, meaning it's been repurposed on different platforms. And I want you to think the same way as well. I want you to create content and repurpose on different platforms. And please, 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 I need to get down my knees here. Hey there. Please, don't try to be perfect and feel comfortable with imperfection. Now, if you look at older videos from my favorite vlogger, who's Marquise Brownlee, the quality wasn't that great. And if you look at my older videos, the quality wasn't that great, and it's still not that great now. Lighting was terrible, etc. But you got to put yourself out there, and you got to be consistent. So for me, for example, my humble consistency is every single Thursday at 8 a.m. I do this call. Put your stuff out there and repurpose on other platforms. And don't strive for perfection because you'll never reach it, I promise you. And just be you. And when you're up there presenting in front of other people or doing social media stuff, if you make a little mistake, you know what happens? You become instantly more likable. I mean, look how lovable I am, and I screw up all the time. Just kidding. But it's true. That's why it's called YouTube. Be you. You do you. You be you. And the same thing when you're presenting at work. I don't want you to care what people think of you. I want you just to be yourself. And it's therapeutic to live your life this way. It's the subtle art of not giving a darn. And so your homework, everybody's homework is to do this, please. I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And again, I'm a tiny man, sorry. And I want you to write this down 10 times. I don't care what people think of X. And I want you to fill in the blank for X. So I don't care what people think of the fact that my nose is so ginormous that I run out of these makeup things every day. Maybe I'm beautiful. Maybe it's Maybelline. But if I was in a ski race, I would kick anyone's butt because my nose is aerodynamic. I don't care. I used to care. Or I don't care that people say to me, Chris, why are you a teacher? I mean, you had a good job in venture capital. I don't care. Or I don't care what people think of my accent. Write this down 10 times, please. And what I want you to do is after you write down all 10, I want you to put those 10 items in your calendar, your personal calendar only, okay, on this device, for example. And I want you to have a repeat every morning at 5 a.m. So you're reminded every day. And I promise you, if you live your life not caring what other people think of you, you'll be happy. And you know what? People aren't judging you. They've got their own issues in their minds. And, someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And if you've been criticized in the past, I want you to remember this quote, please. Unjustified criticism is a disguised compliment. That's powerful. Let me say that again. Unjustified criticism is nothing more than a disguised compliment. So when somebody criticizes you, in your mind, don't say anything, but I want you to think to yourself, gosh, thank you. This dude's so insecure that they compliment me. I feel great. And if you're not getting criticized, you're not successful enough. You want to get criticized. And I want you to change the lens by which you see the world. Okay, so when somebody criticizes you, I want you to think differently about it and say, hey man, thanks for that criticism. These are my rose-colored glasses. And I love to teach with props. I also want you to change your mindset, right? When it comes to public speaking, when it comes to people judging you, etc. Like the Rodin sculpture, I think, therefore I am. Change your thoughts and you can change your world. Yeah. All right. Oh my God, I sound like a used car salesman. Just kidding. All right. Next up, Viping. First time I've seen you on the call. Hope you join us again. Thank you. You wrote, Chris, what is your suggestion on any must-have skills in the coming AI era in the investment industry? From a traditional investment professional CFA perspective, is programming still needed? No. And Not as much. And I'll explain why. So the brilliant founder of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, he was interviewed recently, and he said that because of AI, maybe students should not study programming or do computer science in school anymore. And he said this because AI is going to help us with programming. So what should we study instead? Well, he suggested that we study liberal arts. Why? Because it makes you think creatively. And there's a reason why Steve Jobs, God bless him, used to always say that Apple lives at the intersection of technology and the liberal arts. Liberal arts allows you to be creative. And Jensen Huang also said that he believes that the U.S. economy could outperform other economies in the long run because it has a better education system, in his opinion. And his thesis is this. In the United States, unlike other countries, quite often when you go to university, you have to study liberal arts and you cannot declare your major until your second or third year. As a result, if you study liberal arts, you can be much more creative in your approach to problem solving. So I still think that technology skills are very important, obviously, but you want to expand your horizon and have fun creating with software and other products, and just think of business like you're an artist. Like when I give a presentation, I always think of PowerPoint as being my palette, and I'm a painter, like Bob Ross with awful hair. All right. But in general, I think any repetitive task will be taken away by AI, like customer service, for example. Yeah. And try to disrupt yourself. Try to use AI as much as you can to disrupt yourself so you can embrace it and, add more value in whatever position you're in. Yeah. And so, I gave a presentation yesterday to a large semiconductor company. And I was explaining how to use AI to make a presentation and what you can do. And of course, don't share any confidential corporate data on AI. But what you can always do is you can paste in the entire script of your presentation. And then you can ask AI this. Come up with a list of 25 questions my audience might ask me during this presentation. And it will do it for you. Or you can even tell AI to create 10 slides with 3 bullet points in each slide. Or you can tell AI, come up with a great quote to start this speech with, etc. Yeah. We live in interesting times. All right, Jason, how are you, man? Good to see you, brother. Jason's based in Houston. He has a picture of Nolan Ryan on the wall behind him as well. Good to see. He's in my platinum program. All right, Neil Ench wrote, hey, Chris, do you think the U.S. will fall into a recession in coming months? Yeah. So there's a famous saying, which is, I'm going to butcher this, dude, but economists have successfully predicted 7 of the past 58 recessions. Like, we just don't know. I don't think we're going into recession because a recession means 2 consecutive year-over-year declines in GDP. I don't think it's coming. Yeah. Plus, if it does, the government's going to cut rates. And the brilliance of the government actually raising rates through something called monetary policy. And there's 2 bags of money or 2 medicines the government can use to fix the economy. There's monetary policy and fiscal policy. I can talk about fiscal policy if you want to. But the brilliance of monetary policy is the Federal Reserve, what they can do when the economy sucks, is they can cut interest rates and flood the market with money. And basically what that does is makes the cost of money much lower. And if the cost of money is 0, hypothetically speaking, no one's going to keep their money in the bank. People are going to invest in stocks, and everybody's going to become more wealthy, or people are going to buy more stuff. Yeah. And so there's a lot of bullets left in the chamber for the Federal Reserve to be able to cut interest rates if need be. All right, Manas, good to see you. Hey, Ted, how are you? Okay, Anis wrote, is EBITDA and operating income the same thing? Can you please clarify? Yeah, for those of you not familiar with EBITDA, EBITDA, it stands for earnings before I tricked dumb accountant. And EBITDA, sorry, I can't keep you a straight face. Yeah, EBITDA and operating income are for the most part the same thing. Okay, so EBITDA margins, operating profit margin, the same thing. So the reason you hear people say EBITDA is because EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Why the heck would you look at earnings before other stuff? Because there's certain line items, including depreciation and amortization, that are not cash-based. And so if you look at earnings excluding those things, you can really understand the real earnings power of a company. Plus, the interest rate and taxes are different in different countries. So if you want to compare two companies, it's better to compare them looking at EBITDA and EBITDA multiples, EBITDA margins. So for example, a Swiss watch company being compared to an American watch company. There's different tax rates in Switzerland. So if you want to compare the Swiss watch company and an American watch company, you can look at EBITDA to compare both. That's apples to apples, so to speak. Yeah. And the best way to think about margins in general, and any formula in finance, this is the last thing I'll say on this topic, but I want you to always think of the denominator as being the number one. So if a company has net profit margins of 50%, that means for every $1 in sales, they're making 50 pennies in profit. And when it comes to price to earnings, if a company has a PE multiple of 10, that means for every $1 in earnings per share, investors are paying 10 times that $1. All right, Konstantin wrote, hey, Chris, hey, I'm a first-year applied math student, and I'm looking to pursue a career in finance in Europe. Should I change my major to finance or economics, or would an MBA or CFA be sufficient to make it? Yeah. I'd probably switch your major to finance if you want to. But more importantly, you have to network like crazy. Like what's fascinating is that every time you see a job opening online, if you just apply for it, you're not going to get the job. And the reason is because every online job opening you see, you have literally a 1 in 250 chance of getting that job. So who gets that job? Well, it's ultimately the person that knows someone at the company. So you have to network like crazy. And if you want to learn more about this, how to network to get a job or anything you want, you can always go to my website and download my networking book for free. So let's go here to Haroun Education, scroll to the bottom, and you can download this book for free. Yeah, your network is your net worth, and relationships are always much more important than product knowledge. All right. And then you wrote, I really want to land a position in a hedge fund or an investment bank. Yeah. So set up lots of information meetings using LinkedIn. You can take my MBA program, my silver MBA program, which is 25% off for the next day or two, a couple days or so. Go into that link here. And what I do is I teach you how to write an amazing LinkedIn profile. And I also teach you how to get informational meetings. Now, my humble success rate on getting meetings with people I've never met before by using LinkedIn is and always has been 95%. And I don't say that to impress you. Rather, I say it to impress upon you the fact that you can do it as well using my methodology that I explained in my courses, my MBA program. But what you essentially want to do is you want to find a hook. You want to find two things you have in common with somebody and then send them an email. So let's say you want to work at Morgan Stanley, or you wrote, investment bank. You want to work at Morgan Stanley. Do an advanced search on LinkedIn and find people that work at Morgan Stanley have two things in common with you. Like maybe they went to the same school as you growing up. Like for me, I went to the Toronto French School. And maybe they live in the Bay Area. So if I do an advanced search in LinkedIn and I find a Morgan Stanley employee that also went to the Toronto French School like I did and lives in the Bay Area, I can then send an email with this exact text. John, hope all is well. I also went to the Toronto French School and I live here in the Bay Area. Please let me know if you have time for a coffee. Thanks. And that's all you say. You keep it simplistic because less is more. And the subject line doesn't even matter because it's an email, because you've all read emails you've received. Yeah. Rinse, louder, repeat. Do that 50 times. That's right. For each company you want to work at, and you will get that job eventually. I promise you. And if there are people on this call watching this thinking, Chris, you're cray-cray. 50 meetings. My goodness, that's a lot of work. Well, I ask you this, and I say this with love in my heart as always. How badly do you want that job or that customer or whatever it is? And before you go to informational meetings or meetings with anybody, I always want you to be preemptive and think to yourself, how can I help this person? And just understand that people are often motivated by three things. Number one, they want to make more money. Number two, they want to get promoted. And number three, or threeth, as my son Andrew used to say, they want to enjoy what they do. So if you can go in with that mindset and help people with one of those three items I mentioned, give, then you'll receive. I promise you this will work. And if you have more questions on how to do that, I'm happy to opine. Okay. Hey, Joe. Joe wrote, good morning. Do you think developers like myself, who, as you say, are with you to learn the business side, are going to lose their jobs soon due to AI? Potentially. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think in maybe 5 years or so, certain aspects of developing jobs will be AI'd, so to speak. Yeah. But what I would do is I would start embracing AI and learn how to disrupt yourself or the current marketplace you're in order to be much more productive. Now, the difference between an average engineer and a great engineer, productivity-wise, is 10x. Make sure you love doing what you're doing. If you love being an engineer and you're passionate about programming, then stay with it because you'll be successful longer term. If you're not passionate about it, I'd consider moving on to another industry. All right. Next up, Frank wrote, hey, Chris. Hey, Frank. What do you think about quantitative and algorithmic trading? Yeah. So this is just to each their own, chacun son goût. But for me, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of trading at all. And the reason is because, well, first of all, we can't name a single successful trader that's been successful every single year or every month or whatever it is. And the reason is because every single month stocks go up and down for random reasons. It's geopolitical events, or you're fooled by randomness. I don't know what's going to happen with the election this fall in the United States. I don't know what's going to happen with saber rattling between superpowers. I don't know how investors are going to react to AMD's earnings or whatever. And so what happens is every month has 20 weekdays, meaning 20 days that the markets are open, and stocks go up and down for random reasons. You got to be very, very long-term focused. Warren Buffett said, the longer the view, the wiser the intention. And when Warren Buffett buys a stock, he always tells himself, like when he bought Coca-Cola, he always tells himself, the market's going to be closed for 10 years. Now, obviously, it won't be. But that's how long-term focused he is. And he's owned Coke since the 80s. In fact, if you bought Coke on day one of its IPO many, many years ago, you'd be down 50% 1 year later. But you'd be up, obviously, big time in the long run. So you got to be long-term focused. And one of the great things about real estate, and I've got a very comprehensive real estate course coming out exclusive to my MBA students. So if anybody buys my MBA program, they'll get that for free in late October. But the great thing about real estate is this. You can't sell it. I mean, you can, but it's a pain in the neck and it takes forever. And you're a stockholder. And that's a good thing. Because if we wanted to day trade our houses, we would lose so much money. And we've all bought stocks and then freaked out and sold them when they've gone down. And then we look at the chart, we're like, oh my God, I'm so stupid for selling that. When I say stupid, I'm talking about myself. And so when you think about investing, I want you to think about this. I don't know the path, but I know the destination. And think of all the times that we've freaked out when the S&P is pulled back, or the markets in general. It looks like this historically. That time you freaked out, it was down that much. That time you freaked out again, it was down that much. Think about if you just bought and held it forever. You wouldn't pay as much taxes initially and be worth a lot more, and you'd sleep better at night. And that's why I'm not a fan of day trading. But if you want to learn more about trading in general, and algorithmic or machine learning based or AI trading, you can always do research on a great hedge fund called Renaissance Technologies. Now, they're really the only hedge fund that's figured out how to use AI to make a fortune. And Jim Simmons, God bless him, he passed away recently. He worked at the NSA in the early 80s, and then he quit to start Renaissance. And Renaissance Technologies, that hedge fund, has had an average return of 60% since the 80s. And he uses AI. Now, we will never find out what is in his AI machine, so to speak. And it could be something simplistic like this. This is a crazy example. It's simple. An input could be weather patterns. So if it rains a lot, then short restaurant stocks because fewer people go out to dinner or lunch when it's raining. That sort of thing. Yeah. But he's one of the few that has kind of figured it out. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Manas wrote, Nvidia is breaking all walls. By the way, Jensen Huang worked for AMD for a while. Which he hides now. You know why? And Lisa Su is his cousin's sister. Oh, I didn't know that about Lisa. She's great. And she has a lot of really inspirational quotes about taking risks and not caring what people think of you. I actually quoted her last night in a presentation I gave to a big semiconductor company. I had no idea that Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, was his cousin's sister. Wow. I didn't know he worked for AMD as well. Huh. I know that he worked at Denny's for a while. Okay. Give me 1 second. And then Excel wrote, hey, Chris, is it a bad idea to invest mostly in global index funds and a little bit in emerging markets? Yeah. It all depends. And what you can always do is you can go to a great website called ETFDB, and that's ETF database. And on that website, you can always create a portfolio by looking at one of the 5,000 ETFs they talk about in order to create a diversified global portfolio. But when you buy ETFs, I would only buy them from reputable companies and never buy mutual funds because they're a scam. The fees are high and they underperform ETFs. And when you look at building a portfolio based on ETFs, I would recommend not having more than 5% of your portfolio in any one particular ETF and diversify by sector, meaning tech, healthcare, financial services, etc., and diversify by geography as well. Yeah. Now, when it comes to emerging markets, those markets tend to do very, very well when we're in a bull market, meaning when the market is doing really well, and obviously vice versa when we're in a bear market. Yeah. And if you're curious and not sure about what percent of your portfolio should be in riskier stocks, then an old school methodology from a private wealth management perspective is this. You take 100 minus your age. So if you're 90 years old, 100 minus 90 is 10. And that means 10% of your investment should be in riskier stocks and 90% in less risky stocks or government bonds, etc. And the reason why is because you don't have that much long left in your life to make up for losses. Another example is this. Let's say you're 25. 100 minus 25 is 75. So 75% of your portfolio should be in riskier stocks after you do your research, of course, and 25% in less risky stuff like treasury bonds, etc. Yeah. And it's old school because there are a lot of people on this call that I humbly believe are going to live to 150. It's going to happen. Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to be doing this call in my 150s as well. Yeah. And by the way, I have this because I was giving a presentation last night to a big semiconductor company. And I was talking about what do you do when you're presenting or in an interview and you're stuck and you don't know what to say or you freeze. Well, you can use what I call crutch words. So if you're not sure what to say next, a crutch transition phrase to use is in terms of, or moving on to, or the next item is this. And while you say these crutch items, you can look at your slides to get back on track. Or what you can do is you can use a more sophisticated crutch, a framework to answer questions like this. Let's say that you're in a presentation or a meeting with somebody and they ask you for your thoughts on something. Well, in order to buy you time and sound logical and think of the answer, you can use a crutch framework of the SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so you can answer the question by saying this. That's a great question. In terms of my thoughts, let me talk about a SWOT analysis. The strengths of X are blah, blah, blah. In terms of the weaknesses, which are blah, blah, blah. Moving on to the opportunities, which are blah, blah, blah. And the threats are blah, blah, blah. And if you find that you're rambling in an interview or a meeting at work or a presentation, the best crutch to use is this. And the bottom line is, and then you can just kind of come up with a bottom line message. Yeah. I have a lot of props in here. I love to teach. And when I was younger, actually, I had teachers that thought I had a learning disability. They wanted to fail me and stuff. And God bless my mom. I love her so much. But I couldn't read that well as other students. And I didn't speak as good as them either. So what she did was she actually taught me using props. And she sewed this doll called Miss Finnegan. And whenever I got a question right, she'd give me a cookie, like I'm a dog. Yeah. That's why I teach with props, because my mama. Okay. All right. All right, next up, Snow wrote, hey, Chris, looking for a bit of guidance here. Sure. I'm currently working at a trading desk for a large energy company for about 5 months on the hedging team. What do I need to become a trader? Yeah. Oof. Ooh. Okay. So I would say be a good steward of capital to the extent that you always keep risk management in mind. Now, when I joined my first hedge fund 8 million years ago, my boss told me the first rule of investing is don't lose money. And the second rule of investing is remember rule number 1. So you always want to think about capital preservation. Now, a hedge fund is called a hedge fund because if you think about your backyard, you have a hedge around your backyard, protecting your backyard. And so when you're hedging or you work at a hedge fund, you're protecting and preserving capital. And a lot of people don't realize that most investors that invest in hedge funds are not there to make a killing. They want to protect their capital, in big down years like Q1 of 2020 or Q4 of 2008 or Q3 and Q4 of 2001. So you want to preserve capital. So what I would think about as you sit on that energy trading desk is I would think about how to hedge yourself with different energy investments. So let's say that you own you own oil and you want to hedge it. You can maybe short the OIH index, which is the oil services index, which contains Transocean, ticker RIG, Schlumberger, ticker SLB, etc. Just try to see if there's some sort of correlation or regression analysis between them. And you want to make sure that you don't have too much capital involved in any one particular stock. You might also need to look at beta exposure, meaning don't own too many stocks that have high betas. You might need to offset that by shorting stocks or shorting indexes like the OIH, for example, in order to hedge your risk. Also make sure that you have stop losses in place and much, much more. And in my MBA program, I provide you with all the templates you need to be able to create a diversified portfolio and do all types of risk management and investment research. Yeah, but what I would also do is I'd probably do one write-up every single week, if you can, on stocks, and then share that write-up with the traders on the desk that you work with. And if you want, if you're in my Silver MBA program, which is on sale for 25% off, but every single Thursday at 10 a.m., meaning in 1 hour from now, every Thursday forever, I do a 1-hour Zoom call with a handful of Silver students. And I can help you write those investment theses, so to speak, and I can teach you how to pitch them as well to people you work with. And if you sign up for the Silver MBA, then if you go to the very first lecture, what you can do is you can click to get access to that weekly Zoom call. Yeah. All right. If you have follow-up questions based on that, let me know, please. Yeah. Okay. All right, next up, Boxing Guy wrote, hey, Chris, this is Alex, formerly Alex P. Keaton. Oh, that's right. I remember I used to tease you about that. I thought you were Canadian forever, too, because Alex P. Keaton is from Canada, eh? Yeah, but you mentioned you're from Utah. You wrote, I just switched my moniker to Boxing Guy. Sure. Lastly, I am not a BYU fan. Okay. By the way, BYU is always good at football. And one of the reasons is because, a lot of my friends who went to BYU, before they went to university, they took 2 years off to do missionary work. So they were bigger by the time they got back. Yeah. All right. Next up, Manas from India wrote, how do you get a job in an AI startup? Imagine I don't want to code, and also networking is difficult with them as they may ignore or something, what should I do then? Yeah. It's harder. I still think networking is the answer. And you can always find a way to get in their office and meet them. And I'll give you guys a tip on how to get a meeting with any CEO. And I always love to go right to the decision maker, right to the top. So here's how you get a meeting with any CEO. What you do is this. Every company that's publicly traded, they have these annual shareholder meetings. And nobody goes to them, and they're really boring, and they're usually in a hotel with a bunch of old people that are at the events, and they serve bad coffee. It's true, there's bad coffee. And when the CEO is done presenting at that shareholder meeting, which you can go to, I want you to go up and start talking to her or him. And they're not going to leave that room until everybody is left. Why? Because there could be board members in the audience, or there could be investors in the audience, or there could be other C-level executives like the CFO, COO, et cetera, in the audience. And they want to set a good example. And so you've got this CEO one-on-one, you've got their time. And so what you can do is you can say something along the lines of this. I'm a huge fan of your products, and here's why. And I would love to work at your company. Is there anybody, please, that you can recommend I can talk to at your company about potentially interviewing? And the CEO is going to help you. The CEO is going to say, sure, talk to John Stevenson in HR. And so what you do is immediately you go to LinkedIn and you find John Stevenson and you send John an email. And you say, John, hope all is well. I met with your CEO today and she recommended that I reach out to you. She said I could reach out to you regarding an interview. Please let me know if you have time for a coffee. Thanks a lot, your future boss. Thanks a lot, Chris. And they're going to respond because you mentioned the CEO recommended or said I could reach out to you. You can do the same thing as well if you're trying to sell a product, right? If you're a salesperson, you go right to the top, and you can tell the CEO at that, investor event, you can tell the CEO, I have a product that I humbly believe can save you, 10% of your S&M, meaning sales and marketing expenses. I'd love to show you. Can I show you? Is there anybody in your company I can show? And then the CEO might say, sure, talk to Sally Jones. And you send an email to Sally Jones and say, I met with your CEO today, and he recommended that I reach out to you. Do you have time for a coffee or whatever it is? Yeah. And really important, when you get that coffee meeting, if the bill comes for coffee, you have to do this. You have to say this. I have alligator hands. I can't find my wallet. And T-Rex can't do push-ups. No, I'm just kidding. T-Rex can do push-ups. They're big and strong. Yeah. Now I know why my kids want me to drop them off at parties a block away. Yeah. All right. Next up, Gio wrote, thank you, Chris, for the explanation on shorting stocks. You're most welcome. Do you have any recommendation for class or a book on shorting stocks, or is that more on-the-job training? Yeah. It's certainly on the job. There's no resource out there that I know that prepared me to work in the hedge fund industry. But if you sign up for my MBA degree program, I can definitely help you there. Or what you can do is, if you don't want to buy my stuff, I'm the worst salesman ever, eh? What you can do is this. To learn about how shorting works and how finance works in general, you can go to my my YouTube page. And then what you can do is just go to videos, and every week for 20 weeks this year, what I did was I created a very, very in-depth lesson on how finance works. This is me explaining fiscal monetary policy. And I explained bond investing, but I also explained short selling in a lot of detail. Yeah, it's here somewhere. Here it is here. Short selling explained right here. Yeah. And actually, one of the writers of Billions had a nice comment on some of my content the other day, my Billions content in TikTok, which made me happy. And I'm working on a vlog right now, and I'm going to be creating more vlogs. I got kind of sidetracked this year because of a family event in Canada. But I'm going to be creating, my next vlog is going to be called Wall Street Pro Reacts to the Big Short. And I love teaching based on that stuff as well. Yeah. All right. And Manas wrote, David Solomon, the former CEO of Goldman, the CEO of Goldman, was rejected by Goldman twice. Is an MBA needed for investment banking or getting to Goldman? We have one in Bangalore. Will your MBA help me even if I'm 21? Yeah. So I had a student actually in my MBA program 2 years ago, halfway through the Platinum program. I helped him to get a job at Goldman Sachs in investment banking at the associate start level. And in his class were Harvard Business School students, HBS. And remember, 2/3 of HBS is BS. Maybe that's Haroun Business School. I don't know. So I can definitely help you. But I always say this with love in my heart. I can take my students to the water, but I can't force you to drink. And so you have to practice the concepts that I teach, networking especially. This stuff works. I promise you. Yeah. And in terms of traditional education, I feel like my kids are maybe the last generation that feels like they have to maybe think about university. You know, a lot of great companies don't require an undergraduate degree anymore. You know, like Apple, you know, IBM, Facebook, Wells Fargo, etc. Tons of companies. And the whole system is rigged, and it's clearly not fair. And it's one of the reasons I do what I do. You know, a lot of people that get into these Ivy League schools only got in because their parents went there, which is BS, or because their parents donate a lot of money. That's not fair. Like, why is it that really, really rich people, or Kennedys, for example, their kids always go to these top schools? It's not fair. It's elitist, and it's wrong. So I really believe that if you network like crazy, you can get any job. That's right. You know, for example, speaking of Goldman Sachs, Sidney Weinberg, who is the CEO for a decade or so, he has a high school education. He started at Goldman Sachs in the mailroom, and he networked like crazy. And the mailroom is so fun to talk about because, you know, people that work in the mailroom, you know, they get access to senior management, and they're usually gregarious, outgoing, and they grip and grin a lot, whatever. And there's so many examples of people that started in the mailroom with no education that made it to CEO. You know, David Geffen's another example. So is Barry Diller from Interactive. So is the former CEO of ESPN and the former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine, and Simon Cowell. They all started in the mailroom. Your network is your net worth, and relationships are more important than product knowledge. If you want to work at a firm, Manas, like Goldman Sachs, then set up 50 informational meetings and ask. So you bond before business in those meetings, but you're also going to ask them specifically during that informational meeting, are you hiring? Obviously say it in a nicer way, etc. Remember, closed mouths don't get fed. Yeah. Okay. All right, next up, Alex, who goes by Boxing Guy, wrote, Chris, what are your general honest thoughts, I have to be honest now, okay, on multi-level marketing industry? Yeah. So I'm a fan. I hired a company late last year that really helped to transform my business. And it's called closers.io. And I've worked a lot with them. And my business is, you know, it's doubled. So this stuff does work. Now, instead of you paying the 80 grand or whatever it was I spent, which is cray-cray, what you can do instead, I'll save you the money, is buy these two books here. Okay. Alex Hormozy wrote these books. Start with this guy here, Purple One. Okay, volume 1, then volume 2. Trust me on this. Okay. This one's called $100 Million Offers, right? Teaches you how to come up with something to sell. Then this one here, volume 2, is $100 Million Leads. It teaches you how to sell this thing here. Ouch. It works. And what I love about these books, and Alex Hormozy, again, wrote these, is that they're big so that I can read all the text in them and make tons of notes as well. You know, the older I get, the better I was. So I have senior moments all the time. And what Alex recommends, and this is a good idea actually, is if you get these books, you know, get the Audible version as well. And what you can do is read it while you're listening to the Audible version and pause it every now and then and take notes. But I strongly, there's my lights, I strongly recommend getting these books. Yeah. That's all you need to know about marketing. That's marketing in a nutshell. And what movie is this from? Oh, look at me, I'm in a nutshell. I'm dating myself, clearly, if anybody gets that. I hope somebody gets that. All right, next up, Manas wrote, OpenAI is running a no-end game race to AGI. Most of the founders, 9 of them, are gone. Only Sam and one more guy are left. Has Microsoft sold safe AI dream for money? Yeah. I don't know, and I'll never know. It's fascinating you say that. I'll never know what happened behind the scenes, you know, a year ago or so when Sam was fired, and then, you know, there's a cabal and tons of employees who want to leave, and then the board brought him back. I don't know what happened, but I do know for a fact that Elon Musk was a massive investor in the company, and he quit years ago. And I can only surmise, and I don't know anything, but maybe it's because Elon was worried that we, as a society are adopting AI too fast with not enough provisions in place to keep AI in check. Yeah, but I never invest in a company when all the founders have left or are no longer involved. Yeah, never. Yeah. All right, next up, Luigi. Hey, Luigi, how are you? And I'm smiling because I'm thinking of my little sister who passed away. She's in heaven now. I miss you, Katie. When I used to play Nintendo with Katie, I was always Mario. She was always Luigi. Yeah, and sometimes actually what I would do is, so sorry, Katie, I love you, miss you. Sometimes what I would do is I'd give her a controller. It wasn't even plugged in. I'd say, oh, good job. Nice. Yeah. And we've all done that. Okay. All right. Luigi wrote, hey, Chris, which banks in Canada have an investment banking division like the United States? All of them do. They all do. So Canada is a very regulated market. There's only like 5 or 6 banks. And they all have very powerful investment banks. Yeah. And because there's only 6 banks in Canada, the Canadian banks are powerful overseas as well. And they work on a lot of IPOs. Now, it's going to be hard for you to see this, but this is the IPO prospectus for Facebook when it went public back in 2012. Morgan Stanley's on the syndicate. So is JP Morgan, so is Goldman. And then down here, I see RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. Yeah. So they're all quite powerful. And a lot of times they bought smaller banks in the United States and grown that way. So for example, BMO, meaning Bank of Montreal, they bought Harris Bank in Chicago years ago. Yeah. Yeah. So they all have investment banking departments. Yeah. And then you wrote, I have the opportunity to go to study in Canada as an international student, so I'm interested in working in finance. Nice. Here's what I would do. When you go to Canada as an international student, I'm assuming it's at one of the universities, like University of Toronto, McGill or something. What I would do is while you're there, I would set up a ton of informational meetings with graduates of that university that work for the big 6 Canadian banks that are also from where you're from. They'll take your meetings, I promise you. And if you don't believe me, then think about it this way. Let's imagine that it's 20 years in the future and you're way more successful than you already are today. And somebody reaches out to you that is really similar to you. And this person, went to the same school as you. They also are from the same hometown as you. And they're also a member of a certain organization that you're a member of. And they ask you just for an informational meeting. Would you take that meeting? Of course you would. And that's why you have to ask. Asking will receive its prophetic. It's been true since the beginning of time. People want to help you if you ask. Yeah. And even people that work at big companies now, I want you to do an advanced search in LinkedIn, find people in your company have something in common with you, and just grab a coffee with them, man. They'll mentor you. They'll love to mentor you. People are tickled pink when they're asked to mentor you. We all need mini Yodas. Yeah. Okay. All right, Neil Ench, hey, how are you? You wrote, Chris, as a short-term trader, sure. I've heard that filtering stocks through PE ratio is a good idea, as a high PE stock is more chance of going up in the short run. What do you think about this? I wouldn't look at it that way. I would say that high PE stocks often have higher betas, and higher beta stocks often go up if the market is doing really, really well. That's it. So in a bull market, when the market's going up really fast, stocks with high betas quite often have high PEs and they go up a lot. So if a company has a beta of 2 and the S&P 500 goes up 1%, then that stock with a beta of 2 goes up 2%. If the S&P goes down 1%, that stock with a beta of 2 will go down 2%. And that's probably a higher PE stock. Yeah. So I don't think that there's any sort of a correlation unless your investment thesis is we're going into a ridiculous bull market. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Manas wrote, where are cryptocurrencies going, like after the rate cut? Why has recession fear come back even though everything is okay for the market? Yeah. So when it comes to cryptos, I've said this for many, many years. I actually think that most cryptocurrencies are an absolute scam. But I do believe that if interest rates go down, then people tend to buy crappier investment classes, right? So when interest rates were basically zero, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of crap went up. Like people were buying NFTs. Like nobody talks about NFTs anymore. But the higher interest rates are, the more crappier assets go down, and vice versa. Okay. All right. Next up, Yipping wrote, Chris, what's your view on hedge funds and private equity, both from an investment asset class and industry perspective? Seems the former is in decline for some time, while the latter is quite hot. Yeah, private equity is doing well. Hedge funds are in secular decline. Yeah. So hedge funds did extraordinarily well and materially outperformed the market until about 2002. And around that time, there was a senator in New York, a disgraced former senator, Eliot Spitzer. He created what's called Regulation FD, and that's Regulation Fair Disclosure. And what that means is hedge funds are not allowed to have an edge over us retail investors. So that means that whatever a company says, they have to say it to the entire market at the same time, meaning on a webcast, for example. And so it's getting harder for hedge funds to outperform. It really is. And a lot of them outperformed. Most of them are really ethical, for sure. But the Obama administration, rightly so, went after, some of the corrupt hedge funds, like Steve Cohen's firm. And this is all publicly disclosed. Yeah. But I think the larger, very well-established hedge funds will do well in the long run. And if you're looking to work at a hedge fund or invest in a hedge fund, then I would look at the Tiger Cubs. And I can go into more detail what those are if you want me to. Yeah. From a private equity perspective, I think there's always going to be a growth market for private equity because companies are always mismanaged. Yeah. And so if you want to learn more about private equity, you can read a book called Barbarians at the Gate, which is about Henry Kravis and his management buyout and LBO of the National Biscuit Company, which was Nabisco. I'm a big fan of Henry Kravis. I've met with him. I can talk about that as well if you want me to. Yeah. Okay. And then Quint Quant Essential wrote, Jim Simmons has been won that algo quant trade. Yeah, he's done great. Yeah. Hey, Dewan. Good to see you. Dewan wrote, a few months ago, I asked you to help me with my LinkedIn. I made some changes you suggested and started posting more often. Do you have some time to look again? Yeah, if you're in the Silver MBA program, I'll see you in just over half an hour. Just go to the very first lecture of the curriculum, and I can help you there. Yeah. Okay. And then Anise wrote, Chris, you talked about liberal arts over computer science skills. Unlike IT business, what areas or sectors could still be viable for startups without adversely being impacted by AI and the digital world? Yeah. Oh, it's tough. Mark Andreessen great venture capitalist, he used to always talk about software is eating the world. So what I would do is I would look for what sectors have not yet been disrupted by software. Yeah. And Jensen Huang kind of quoted Mark Andreessen by saying, yes, software is eating the world, but AI is eating software. So just look for markets that have not yet been disintermediated. And before you create any company, what I want you to do is I want you to create a thorough business plan. And part of my MBA degree program, there's a venture capital boot camp where I teach you how to write a business plan and teach you how to raise capital, et cetera. And I've humbly raised and managed over $1 billion in my career. So I've made every mistake there is to make, but every battle is won before it's been fought. And so before you start any company, I want you to write a thorough business plan, and I can help you with that in my MBA degree program. All right. Now, next up, Manas wrote, I checked out Steve Schwarzman. He has 450 million of put options on the S&P 500. That is huge. Is he aware of something insider coming, like the economy longer term and markets? Yeah, I don't know. I know of him, of course, everybody does. but I have no idea. Yeah. And that could be a hedge as well for the long side of his portfolio, which by law he has to publicly disclose. And all investors that manage over $100 million, by law, every 3 months, they have to disclose what they own. And that's why people freaked out about the markets a couple of weeks ago, because Warren Buffett cut his 40% position in Apple to 20%. Yeah. All right, Phil, Germany, how are you? Phil wrote, I'm thinking of getting a job in tech sales so I can break into AI and machine learning career and help me start my business. What are your thoughts? Yeah. If you're passionate about technology, then consider doing it. And sales is a great career to have, because any entrepreneur or CEO that's successful, they're great salespeople, and you can always learn this stuff. And also, a sales job is somewhat recessionary proof. And I say that because when companies have to eliminate jobs or cut expenses, they're always mindful of not letting salespeople go that are beating quota always. And the great thing about sales is if you can work in a company where it's a meritocracy, meaning you eat what you kill. So you can make an unlimited amount of money if the accelerators kick in from a commission perspective. And I can go into more detail on that if you want me to. Yeah. Hey, yeah, how are you? Yeah, I graduated from my gold MBA program earlier this year. Great to see you. You wrote, if people are thinking about getting the MBA degree, it's 1,000% worth it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And to learn more about the Haroun MBA degree program, you can always go to learn.harounventures.com. And my products are 25% off for the next couple of days or so. I think my marketing team has a Labor Day or back to school sale or something going on. And all you have to do is when you go to learn.harounventures.com, at checkout, just enter in fall 25. Thank you for that. Okay. Next up, Hazi Crypto wrote, I have $100,000 of savings. How can I grow it? Yeah. So step one is make sure you max out your retirement savings program, your 401k, which is about $23K per year in the United States. If you live in another country, just do a search for what is the 401k equivalent in my country's name. So step one, you want to max that out every single year, so that you're not going to be paying taxes until you take that money out when it's much, much bigger many years from now. Another thing I would do is I would look to diversify to having a portfolio with at least 20 positions that are no more than 5% each. And in my MBA degree program, I provide you with all the templates and tools and tips and tricks and all that stuff to be able to do your own investment research. Now, from a risk management and portfolio diversification perspective, I don't want you to have more than 20% of your portfolio in any one particular sector, like technology, for example. I also want you to make sure that you're investing in very liquid stocks, meaning ones that you can sell if need be, because illiquid stocks own us in a down market. And if you don't have time to do your own investment research on individual stocks, then maybe stick with ETFs. And so for me personally, do your research, please. But whenever I'm not sure what to buy, I usually buy ticker VOO. Which is the S&P 500 index fund. I don't care if it's up every year, but I know in the long run it's going to be up a lot. And if all you did was you took, just over 20K every year, which is a lot, and you put it into the S&P, then in 20 years, that would be worth over $1 million, tax-free, if it's in your retirement savings account. And of course, you pay tax on when you take it out. If your spouse did that too, you'd have over $2 million in 20 years. And with your children, if you maxed out their educational savings accounts, which is I think about 15K or so per year, which is a lot. But if you max it out, then in 18 years, that would be 700K per child. Yeah. Dude, they grow fast, man. Enjoy every second. And I remember with Andrew, he went to a preschool called PTS here in the Bay Area. And it was a daddy Sunday at school. And I remember really well, I didn't go to that event because I had something really important to do at work. I don't even remember what I was doing at work, but I do remember the shameful mistake I made of not going to that event. So put your kids first, man. They grow quickly and nothing matters more. Yeah. All right. And by the time your child is 12 years old, you've already spent 90% of the time you'll ever spend with them. All right. And then the financial controller wrote, learn finance and dad jokes. I love it. Yes. And my jokes are brutal. Yeah. And I repeat my jokes too. And that's a big mistake, I know. But that's okay because in my courses, I have bad dad humor, but there's a 30-day 100% money back guarantee. And I love what I do. All right, next up, Excel wrote, hey, Chris, about index funds. There is a limited ETF at my stockbroker in Sweden. Yeah. What should I do? I can't find REITs or commodities ETFs with low fees. Yeah. What you can always do is this. You can go to ETFDB here and then search through ETFs that you can transact in Sweden, for example, right? And you can look at so here there's over 1,000 just US focused ETFs. So take a look here to see if you're allowed to invest in these. Or what you can do is maybe look at similar ETFs in Germany that invest in the same companies these ETFs invest in, and you might be able to invest that way. Or what you can do is this. You can call up, get the phone number for the top 5 banks in Sweden, call each of them, and ask to be transferred to the brokerage department in all 5, and ask them 2 questions. Number 1, what are your commissions? Number 2, how do I invest in these ETFs? And whatever one has the lowest commissions and lets you access the ETFs you want to invest in, that's the one to go with. Yeah. And always talk to your accountant first. This goes for everybody in this call. Before putting any investments of yours into your retirement savings account, ask your accountant before you do so. Because sometimes if you invest in an asset class, you can't move it into your retirement savings account if you don't buy it the right way first. And I don't want anybody in this call to do your own taxes. I want everybody to have an accountant. Because doing your own taxes is like doing surgery on yourself. I know it's a crazy thing to say, but it's true. The CPA profession exists because it's complicated, man. The tax code changes all the time. And I promise you, if you all get an accountant, you'll probably get more money back in the long run. And you'll stay within the confines of the law too. In terms of how to find a good accountant, it's tough. There's no Yelp for accountants. Just talk to your rich aunt or uncle or friends at work or whatever it is and ask them to introduce you to their accountant. And I don't care what the cost is. You will save money in the long run. It's kind of like with very wealthy investors or very wealthy people. They pay $1,000 an hour, which is crazy, for tax lawyers. And it's painful for them, but they make millions because of that. Yeah. And the way to get rich and stay richer and get insanely rich is to legally pay less in taxes. Hence, have an accountant, please. Okay. Hey, Mike. Hey, George. How are you? George is in my MBA program. He's going to publish his first book by December 2nd of this year. And I'm looking forward to reading it. So George wrote, good day, Chris. If you have a video company, what online tools are valuable? Yeah, a video company. Yeah, explain that in a little bit more detail, please. Like if you're trying to stream, then I would mention using a product like I use here called Wirecast, or you can use a free version of this called OBS, which stands for Open Broadcasting Software. Yeah, let me know a little bit more detail about your business plan and your business model in general, and I can humbly help. Thanks. Yeah, and if you want today during office hours, certainly you can ask here. But if you want over Zoom, I can give you a demo of everything during our Zoom office hours today too. Yeah, and you're gold or platinum, so you get 3 hours per week of office hours forever. Okay. All right. All right. Next up, Mike wrote, I passed the Series 65 exam last month. Congratulations. Do you think I should add that to my resume? And if yes, where can I add it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, put it in the education section, right? So, for education, you put your undergrad or high school, whatever it is. And then just as a bullet point, you can have certifications. You list it there. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to tell everybody how to pass exams without reading the question. This doesn't always work. But if it's a qualitative exam, like the Series 63 is, not the 65. But if it's a qualitative exam, you have to think like a lawyer. So here's how you do it. And I'm able to, on many exams, get over 50% without reading the question. Here's how you do it. So you have to think like a lawyer. And it pains me to say that because I'm not a big fan of lawyers. Unless you're a civil rights lawyer, then I love you. And little side note, are you a jerk before you go to law school, or is that something they teach you? Just kidding, sort of. But you have to think like a lawyer. So here's an exam question, for example. The question is this. What color is this iPhone case? And the answers are as follows. It's always black. That's A. A, it's always black. B is it's never green. C is it's sometimes yellow. And D is none of the above. So you have to think like a lawyer. And lawyers always look for exceptions. So it's always black? Eh? No, that's wrong. Why? Well, depending on how I angle this, if there's blue light, it can look bluish. It's never green. Well, it can be green if I have a green light and I shine it this way. I can't remember C, but I think it's sometimes yellow. Yes, that's the right answer. Because it could look somewhat yellow if I angle it a certain way with a certain type of light. So what the answers that are always wrong are the ones that use the word always or never, because you can find an exception. And I was telling my godson, Alex, who interned with me this summer, I was telling him that after every exam you write in school, and review it and then go to the TA or the teacher and argue, if you have a valid case, to get a higher grade. And you can contest it with what I just mentioned to you. Sometimes, never, always. And if all you did in undergrad was you went and you politely contested every single test you wrote, your grades would go up between 5 and 10% on average. It's true. Doesn't work as much with quantitative stuff like mathematics, of course. Okay. And then Mobola7 wrote, Chris, if I'm correct, I believe it's Austin Powers' movie. Great movie. Yes, exactly. Austin Powers he said, look at me, I'm in a nutshell. And that was right around the time when he was trying to do that 3-point term with that little golf buggy. It's funny. Yeah. Whatever happened to him? He had that one bad movie. And then Hollywood kind of turned their back. I don't get it. Yeah. He was funny. All right. Next up, Dodd wrote, hey, Chris, I have a question about buying a mosquito treatment franchise. Sure. I have the pro-forma, but how do I know if it's a good deal or a great deal or even worse? Yeah. So you have the right to ask for the investment offering memorandum and to, if it exists, and to get all the financial statements. Okay. What I want you to do is review them thoroughly, and I want you to hire a lawyer to review them as well to make sure that there are no outstanding issues like lawsuits, etc. Yeah. You want to take a look at the bank account as well of that firm to make sure that their net income actually matches what was on the pro forma net income or income statement that the company had over the past 5 or 10 years or so. When you forecast into the future, you got to be mindful of a lot of things. Number 1, the competitive environment. Number 2, the regulatory environment. Number 3, the growth of the entire industry and the total addressable market. And in my MBA program, if you join, I have plenty of templates that can answer all those questions for you. Yeah. Okay. But I would really pay attention to, are there any key employees that need to stay? Because what happens quite often is when one company buys another one, the founder usually sticks around for a year. And then they're like, see ya, but I wouldn't want to be ya. They leave because they can't stand not being, the boss. And that's what a company is, people. So make sure there's golden handcuffs in place to the extent that key employees are not going to leave. Maybe give them options. Yeah, that vest every 4 years. And I can talk about that in more details if you want me to. Okay, next up, Jesus. Good to see you. Jesus in my current MBA class that started in May. He wrote, can you please share your thoughts on car buying versus car renting? Yeah. Whew. It's tough, and it depends on whether or not you run your own company or not. And you got to map it out, right? What you have to do is you have to look at the price of the car. Let's say it's 10 grand. And let's say you want to keep it for 5 years. How much can you sell it for after 5 years? What's the residual value? And if that's higher than the monthly rent payments you pay anyway, then buying makes more sense. You also have to look at alternative uses of capital. If you want to invest your money instead of tie it up in an asset like a car, it might not make sense to buy. Yeah. But you're in my gold or platinum program. So today, during your 3 hours of office hours calls, if you want, I can create a spreadsheet from scratch and show you which option makes more sense to you. Yeah. But you want to also talk to an accountant because you can get nice tax write-offs depending on where you're located. I think you're in Spain. Depending on where you're located and if you have your own company, etc. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people like to lease stuff as well. Okay. And then Dowd wrote, also, what kind of businesses have survived or performed better in regards to how they paid or financed it? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say that a lot of companies go bankrupt because they take on too much debt. In fact, I always recommend my students never get a bank loan, ever, for a company you want to start. The only time you should get a bank loan is for your mortgage. But if you get a loan for your company and, you can't make a payment, it's over. It's DOA, dead on arrival, and the bank can seize it. Obviously, register the company name so the bank can't come after your asset. So what do you do instead? Well, I always recommend selling equity in your company, right? So you have two choices. Raise money, meaning debt, a loan, or equity, meaning get somebody to own part of your company. Equity. Always go with equity. But make sure whoever invests is a minority shareholder, and you still have voting control. And that's exactly what Mark Zuckerberg did as well. Where's my Facebook prospectus? I had it here a second. Oh, here it is here. I have a lot of prompts. So what Zuck did, and you can look at the cover of the Facebook S1 document, is although he sold more than 50% of the company, he still had more than 57% voting control in the company. Same thing with Larry Page and Sergey Brin. That's why there's two classes of Google stock. So you can get investors that are equity owners, meaning they have ownership in the company, but they can't vote you out, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. And what you want to do initially is you want to raise money from high net worth investors because the sales cycle is quite short because they're the decision maker. Don't talk to VC firms initially. Yeah. Yeah. But equity always trumps debt. Always. All right. I'm also wrote, thank you for everything, my mentor. God bless your family and you all forever and ever. See you next week. Thank you for the emojis. God bless you. Namaste. I love you. Thank you. And every day I get out of bed, I always thank God for 10 things in this order, which gets me into a peak mental state. Andrew, Matthew, Dylan, my wife, Christine, my mom, my dad, my brother, Jamie, the memory of my lovely sister, Katie, my sister, Elizabeth, and all of you, my students. I'm grateful. And if you practice gratitude like that, again, you'll get out of bed in a peak mental state. Yeah. Okay. Can you believe I don't sit down all day? I never sit down. Yeah. All right. It gives me energy, though. And years ago, actually, one of the reasons I don't have a chair in my office that I sit on is because several years ago, I think I had COVID, but somebody mentioned, Chris, you sound really tired, not energetic. And then somebody else said it. And I was like, you know what, man? One data point doesn't make a trend, but a couple do. And so I decided, as Sir Richard Branson says, screw it, let's do it. And I stand. That's all I do. And I have this treadmill, which costs, I think it's $150 now. I recommend everybody get. I can give you guys a link right now if you want. But I get, 20 to 30,000 steps a day, every day. And, it gives me unbelievable energy. Yeah. So I can, speak gooder, work gooder and stuff as well. Yeah. I can hear my mom saying, Christopher, let's speak better. Okay. By the way, when you go into the kitchen and your mom is there, if you live out at home like I do, I don't live with my parents anymore. I wish I did. What you have to do is you got to pretend you're useless, okay? Hear me out. So if you go into the kitchen, which is what I do when I go see my parents, like my mom thinks like I'm a little kid still, right? Of course. So I'll say, Mom, how do I make a peanut butter sandwich? And she'll be like, oh, honey, I'll take care of it. Yeah. So play the useless card. It works. Yeah. Also, dating advice. Oh my God, I'm going there. Here I go. If you get into an argument and it doesn't matter what you say, you're screwed. I want you to say 2 words. I understand. That's it. Because you're not saying you agree or disagree. You're just saying you understand. It works. Try it, please. Oh my God, I should not be giving dating advice. Also, if you get married and your wife says to you, hey, let's have dinner with my parents this weekend. If your response is this, sure, honey, but didn't we already have dinner with them last weekend? All she hears is, you hate my parents. Okay, stick with me, kids. You'll go far. Just kidding. All right. And then, okay, next up, DSSSS wrote, hey, Chris, I'm planning to enroll in your financial analyst course at Udemy. Does it also include the 100-step research template? No. The 100-step research template is only available in my MBA degree program, this guy here, yeah, which is on sale, 25% off for next day or two or something. Yeah. All right. Next up, Denny Rogers wrote, hey, Chris, about your MBA. Sure. What section is most important for entrepreneurship? Yeah. So there's 5 main sections. The entrepreneurship section has all the stuff you need to know about entrepreneurship and the venture capital bootcamp. Now, the place to go in the Silver MBA is go to E31. What does that mean? That means entrepreneurship, semester 3, class 1. And there's 5 classes where I do the venture capital bootcamp. E31 through E35. That's entrepreneurship, semester 3, class 1 through class 5. And I'll show you really quickly here. So if we go to learn.harounventures.com and you click here, and at checkout, you can just enter in fall 25 for 25% off. Yeah. But if you scroll through here, you'll see that there's 5 main pillars and 6 is optional. There's finance and accounting, where I teach you everything about investing. Entrepreneurship, we just talked about. Sales, marketing, communications, economics management strategy, personal growth, and then technology, where I have courses on Python, AI, Excel, etc. Yeah, everything is included. And you can always scroll down to see a little video on every single section, including entrepreneurship. Okay. And if you buy the Silver MBA, you get access to me every single Thursday from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. for a 1-hour Zoom call forever. Now, I do have to pre-announce and let you know that there's going to be 1 month where you're not going to see me, guys. I'm going to be gone. And that's when GTA 6 eventually comes out. I'm not showing up for a month. Like, I'm just going to be nerding out playing that game. I can't wait. Yeah. And I've started listening to Tom Petty music again because of that trailer. Okay. Next question is, regarding your MBA, how much time should it take to complete in terms of months? Yeah. So there's close to, I think it's getting closer to 500 hours of content now. In order to pass, all you have to do is get over 50% on half of the quizzes. There's 100 quizzes. And there's short quizzes. So why did I set it up that way? Why, in order to pass, do you only have to get over 50% on half of the 100 quizzes? Because this is supposed to be your MBA on your terms. And it's not fair for me to make everybody watch every single lecture. You might only be interested in starting a company, so the entrepreneur stuff matters more to you. Or you might only be interested in learning how to invest, so the finance and accounting stuff might be more interesting to you, etc. Yeah. But you could probably do it, if you weren't working, you could probably get it done in 1 to 2 months. But if you are working, you can probably get it done in 6 to 12 months, depending on how many hours per week you dedicate to it. And I set it up, I architected it so that you can watch it on any device, like a cell phone, a tablet, computer, TV, whatever. It all works. And every single class has a workbook that's available in 3 different formats: Word, PDF, and Google Docs. Yeah. And I spent over $1 million making it. And I'm happy I did it, because every single new elective I create, you're going to get for free forever. And for those you already enrolled in the MBA program, you can always go to the last lecture of your curriculum, and you can get access to all of the electives that I publish. And I've been working very hard on a comprehensive real estate elective that's going to be released this October, that is exclusively going to be available to only my MBA students. And for those of you that have enrolled or will enroll, you can always get access to that by going to the very last lecture of your curriculum. And I'm going to teach you how to invest like a rock star when it comes to real estate, to the extent that I want all of you to be able to make more money from your real estate investments than your actual job within 10 to 20 years. And I'll teach you how to do that. And real estate's a much better investment than stocks. And the reason is because you can use some leverage as well. And the tax write-offs are insane. So if you went back and watched the first televised debate between Hillary and Donald Trump, you'll see that Donald Trump talks about how he uses depreciation write-offs in real estate, to save on taxes. I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. Yeah. Okay. And I will have to wrap this up shortly. And if I don't answer all of your questions, then you can do a couple things. Number one, join me next week at the same time. Number two, you can join my silver MBA program and click on the first lecture and join me, in about 10 or 15 minutes for the weekly 1-hour Zoom call that you get access to forever, even after you're done with the program. Yeah. Yeah. And don't, I say it with love in my heart, please don't email me questions, because I can't answer all the questions. It's impossible. Yeah. Always ask me here. Thanks. Okay. All right. Next up, Ryan wrote, what's the easiest way to borrow against a patent application? The patent is for NFT gating filed in 2022. Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. So what happens with the intellectual property courts in the United States is they're very backed up. And that's why whenever you see patent pending, it's almost as good as patent has been approved. Now, what you can do if you want to learn more about this is do a search on the former CTO of Microsoft. His name is Nathan Myhrvold. And after Nathan Myhrvold left Microsoft, he started a patent trolling company where he would invest in buying a lot of patents. And I think he levered up and used a lot of debt as well. You can also get a good precedent in Canada by doing a search for NTP and Research in Motion to see how they monetize that. Now, if you're going to lever up, which I don't recommend doing, but what I recommend doing if you want to lever up is, first of all, register a company name so that you're not liable personally. Then under that company name, what I would do is I would put that asset, meaning the goodwill asset or whatever it is, that the patent, on the balance sheet of that company. And then you're going to have to convince people that the value of the company is much higher than it is right now by showing pro forma financial statements. Then you might be able to get a loan based on that, but I don't recommend it. Yeah. And talk to a lawyer too about all this stuff. I'm not a lawyer. You can always go to LegalZoom.com and talk to a lawyer as well. Yeah, on the cheap. Yeah. Okay. All right. Verticalo wrote, some countries like Belgium tax salaries so much that companies have resorted to leasing cars for personal and business use as part of your salary. Yeah, it's getting crazy, the cost of labor. So when I need labor, what I do sometimes is I go to this incredible website called onlinejobs.ph. And as you can see here, you can hire people to do anything. So let me click here. I don't know. Let's go to Google Ads. And you can hire people that have bachelor's degrees for $5 an hour or $5.90 per hour, $8 per hour. And what some people do, not me, but what some people do is they hire 3 people to do the same job. And they tell all 3 of them that we're only going to keep one of you after a 1-week trial. Yeah. Now, when I advise my students on how to start a company in the Venture Capital Bootcamp, I make sure your expenses are near zero, always. And I don't think you need to hire people. I think you can outsource everything. And that's certainly what I do. And even Microsoft, speaking of Nathan Myhrvold, but Microsoft's, whoops, that's my helmet on the floor there. But Microsoft, when Nathan Myhrvold was the CTO there years ago, in the early days, what Microsoft did was a lot of the employees were temps. Yeah. And so that way you don't have to pay, payroll taxes and all that stuff. Yeah. It's almost too good to be true, the idea of being able to outsource overseas. I'm surprised the government doesn't try to crack down on it, but it's incredibly deflationary and the right way to run a business, I think. Yeah. Okay. And Ryan liked my dad humor of let's be gooder. Yeah, thanks. And then Dowd wrote, amazing how much value you provide, Euros. No, thank you. It's fun for me. Yeah. And I would, the way that you know you found your passion in life is if you're on vacation and you tell yourself, I can't wait to get back to work. Like, I don't have a job, I have a passion. I thoroughly love doing what I'm doing. I love to help people. Yeah. And another way is this. If you're not sure what your passion yet is, tell yourself this. For the next 30 days, you're not allowed to travel, and you cannot go to work, and you cannot go to school. What are you going to do with your time? And whatever that is your passion, your purpose, your raison d'être, and that is what you should do no matter what anybody says. But write that business plan first. Okay, and Danny, you're most welcome. Okay, last question I'm going to answer. Ravati, how are you? Good to see you. Ravati, I think you graduated from my Platinum MBA a year ago, and you had that VR product company. I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you. Yeah. You wrote, hope you're doing well. Good to listen to you after many months. It's always very informative and motivating to hear your session. And then you wrote, is there an alumni event planned this year? That's right. I met you in person. Yeah. In Burlingame when I rented that place. Yeah. There's nothing scheduled this year. Yeah. There's no alumni event this year. This year has been cray for me for many reasons. Yeah. And actually, first week of October, I don't think there's going to be this weekly webcast because I'm going to be in Kenya building our next school. Yeah. But please join Ravati. I mean, you have access for life. Use the usual Zoom address and join me, in a couple of minutes on the weekly Zoom call. It'd be great to see you and catch up. Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody, please like and subscribe and all that stuff my marketing person wants me to tell everyone. If you're looking for a marketing executive to outsource your marketing to, I have the solution for you. The name of the company is Cox Creative Media. And Cassandra Cox is the founder. She is my CMO. My business functions because of her. She's great. And so if anybody's looking to also outsource marketing stuff, everything marketing related, digital, everything, she's like McKinsey. She's great. You can always send me an email and I'll introduce you. My email address is support@harounventures.com. Please like and subscribe again. And if you want to buy my products, all my products or most of my products at 25% off, this sale ends soon, just go to learn.harounventures.com and make sure at checkout to enter in the code FALL25. God bless you all. And I'll see you next week and every week. And for those of you in my silver program, I'll see you in a couple of minutes in our silver session. All right. God bless you and thank you.